everybody. Welcome to the Route Consultant Weekly webinar. I'm Leah Nelson. I work on the education team with Josh, who is our frequent Route Consultant webinar host. You've probably seen him before. I'm kind of our numbers girl on the team. I primarily work with financials and business valuations for both FedEx and our silos and really everything in between, looking at market values, market trends, really just anything numbers related that falls to me. So for our regular attendees, welcome back. If you're a new attendee, welcome. So whether you're brand new to this industry or you've been a contractor for years and years, we want the webinar to be a place where we can come together and answer questions and just learn a new topic each week and have a good time with it. So before we get started, I do have to read a quick disclaimer, as we do every week. So Route Consultant is not endorsed by and is not recommended by Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. Route Consultant is not sponsored by, is not approved by, is not associated with, and has no connection whatsoever with Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. So basically all this means is that you won't hear any materially non-public information on the webinar today, but we do hope you hear some helpful and useful information nonetheless. One quick note before we get into the content for today, for all of our viewers, so we'll go over content for a little while, and then we're gonna have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So if you do have any questions, drop them in the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. Do not put them in the chat feature. If you put them in the chat feature, I probably won't see it. Also, if you raise your hand, it's hard for me to know what your question is. Can't really call on you. So make sure you're dropping any questions that you've got in the Q&A function on the screen. And if you are watching online on YouTube or wherever later on, and you have questions about today's content, email us at info@routeconsultant.com. We can get all of your questions answered. So on that note, today we are going to be chatting about ways that you can increase your bottom line by saving on sales taxes, which is always a really fun topic. And with that, we're going to bring on Alex, who is our resident line haul expert.
Hey, thanks, Leah. So, the opportunity to save money and avoid paying taxes legally is very attractive to me, and I think it should be attractive to everybody else as well. I have an opinion that the government is a very poor user of my funds and my dollars, and so I think I can more effectively use them more, than the federal government or the state government. So any opportunity I can, I will minimize my tax burden. There are a lot of different things you can do. I would definitely talk to a CPA, but some of the tax strategies that you should look at are the following. So one of them is where you decide to buy your vehicles. Two is where do you decide to title your vehicles? If you are a FedEx contractor and you decide to go the base plate route where FedEx provides your base plates, that's something else you don't have to worry about. But that would be another area where you could take advantage of states where it's cheap to register your vehicle. But since we're all, by and large, utilizing FedEx to provide us with base plates, you don't have to worry about that. So as you know, when you buy a vehicle, you can either buy it brand new or buy it used. You are going to pay a federal excise tax. On top of that, you're going to pay a sales tax. So if you're buying a $200,000 vehicle and you have a 10% sales tax in that state, you could be paying upwards of $20,000 on that vehicle. So it's really important that, if you are effective and you do it correctly, you can buy vehicles in states where you don't pay a sales tax. And then on top of that, then you can title vehicles in states where you don't pay a tax on that as well. And so that's a really important way because, this can add 1 to 3 basis points or 1 to 3% to your bottom line and improve your margins. So if you're talking about a company that does, say, 15% margins on $1 million worth of revenue, and you're able to increase it by 3%, that's $30,000 that's hitting your bottom line. That improves your cash flow and makes life a lot better for yourself. So let's get out of the way and talk about sales tax, and then we can talk about some other strategies that you can look at. So states not to buy vehicles in, okay? The reason why is because you have to pay a sales or use tax, and those are Alabama, Arizona, Arkansas, Colorado, Indiana, Massachusetts, Mississippi, Missouri, Nevada, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Oregon, and West Virginia. Kind of weird, right? A lot of them are red states. Some of them are blue states. You wouldn't really expect that mix. Like some of the best states to title a vehicle in, like Illinois, it's a phenomenal state to title a vehicle. All you have to do is pay, I think the fee now is $155 to title a vehicle there. So that's really cheap. Other states will won't require you to pay a sales or use tax or give you a rolling, what they call a rolling stock exemption. Another state that does that is, for example, Michigan. California of all states gives you a rolling stock exemption. Connecticut. So these are really blue states. There are plenty of red states out there too, Louisiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Tennessee. But things to really look at when you're looking at this is making sure you understand the requirements not to pay that sales and use tax, or what are the requirements to get your vehicle titled there. So, for example, for me, I happen to live in Colorado. My business is organized in Illinois. I'm incorporated in Illinois. Don't ask me why. And then I have operations in Kentucky, Mississippi, and Tennessee. So I buy a lot of my vehicles in Kentucky or in Tennessee because I don't have to pay a sales or use tax there. Now I title them in Illinois because if I title them in Illinois, I don't have to pay a titling fee. I just have to, or a title tax. So I just pay $150. Now you might ask, well, why don't I title them in Tennessee or in Kentucky? Well, one of the issues with Kentucky is that if you decide to title there, then you have to actually get the vehicle's VIN verified, which is a pain in the butt. You have to actually take your vehicle to a location where they'll actually look at the VIN and say, yes, this tractor trailer and this VIN match. So you literally pay a guy to look at your VIN, look at your vehicle and say, yep, they're the same. Kind of stupid, but it is what it is. In Tennessee, if you decide to title the vehicle in Tennessee, then you actually, after 3 days, you have to pay sales and use tax on it. So by buying vehicles in Tennessee and then titling them in Illinois, I can avoid having to pay that sales and use tax. Now, one of the really fun things to do is buy vehicles and title them in, buy vehicles in Tennessee, title them in Mississippi, and then operate them in Tennessee. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, so in Tennessee, you don't have to pay income taxes, but you have to pay an asset tax. In Mississippi, you pay income tax, but you don't pay an asset tax. So if you title your vehicle in Mississippi, and then operate it in Tennessee, you can avoid paying income tax and paying the asset tax. So these are all things that you should be thinking about when you're going through the process of thinking about how you're going to organize your company. I wouldn't go through the process of organizing in Illinois. Illinois has a lot of disadvantages in it for being a blue state. Like I have to report the number of my drivers that take sexual harassment training on an annual basis. Other things like that. But there are some advantages, when it comes down to titling and registering. The other thing from there, what you can do is then there are certain states where you don't have to pay sales or use tax on replacement parts and on labor for maintenance. So, for example, in Kentucky, I can apply to get a sales tax account, which I'm never going to pay sales tax for because I don't collect any sales tax. But then by then, what it allows me to do is if I report all the repair parts and maintenance I conduct on a quarterly basis, then I am exempt from paying maintenance or exempt from paying sales tax on maintenance and labor in Kentucky. Other states have that. They have a rolling stock exemption on repair and maintenance. Michigan does that. Washington for certain, so Georgia, Kansas, Kentucky, Maryland, Minnesota's a partial, Michigan, Missouri, New York, and North Carolina have a partial exemption from paying sales and use tax on repair and maintenance. So these are all things to think about when you're operating and when you're conducting. If you have a team that's on the border of Ohio and Kentucky, it might make sense to try to limp that vehicle into Kentucky if you can apply for that rolling stock exemption on sales tax. Because if you're doing a $5,000 repair, and you're looking at a 10% sales tax in Ohio versus Kentucky, I mean, that's $500 and it adds up if you're running 30 or 40 vehicles a year. So these are all little tricks of the trade about how do you improve your margins and what you should be thinking about when you're looking at like higher level of like, how do I get my business to grow and how do I make it more advanced and more productive and improve my efficiency? So, maybe not something that you should be worried about at the base level. but it can have an impact about where you decide to organize your company. Like I said, I mean, I live in Colorado. I don't need to have my company organized in Colorado. I can have it organized in Delaware, if, of all places, if I wanted to. I'm actually looking at, opening up a new entity and running it out of Wyoming. And these are all reasons for tax advantages. So this is something that you should be talking about with your accountant, talk about with other contractors, talk about it with your lawyer so you understand the implications. But these are ways for you the money that you spend talking to your lawyer and your accountant is going to save you 1 to 3% on an annual basis going forward for the life of your business. And that makes a meaningful amount of money. Because if you're saving 3% on your business over 10 years on $1 million business, you're looking at $300,000. So,
Yeah.
it's very boring. I like, I like looking at tax laws. I like looking at tax, I like getting into the numbers and trying to figure out ways so I can make money or make more money. I mean, I think the reason why we all become small business owners is because we want to make money, and we'll all look for every single lever legally that we can do to make more money if we can.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the whole point of owning a business is to increase those margins. And two, I know we kind of talk about this a lot. Really, the more you increase your margins, your NOI, the more you can also sell your business for later on. So not only do you get immediate benefit from you just, having extra money in your pocket all the time, it shows that your business is making more money and then that it's more valuable and that buyers should buy it for a higher price. So that's kind of, particularly working with valuations myself is something that I like to preach is not only do you get that immediate benefit, you do get kind of long-term benefits from saving money as well. I know that some of this is buying trucks and stuff really is under, it's CapEx, so it's under the bottom line, but still shows up, particularly if you do the repair and maintenance stuff, that shows up above your bottom line and impacts your NOI and really can save you a lot of money.
Well, it does also have an impact on your leasing because there's certain states where if you lease it in that state, you're going to pay sales tax on it. So you should definitely look at where the leasing laws are different from the financing or acquisition laws. So definitely talk to whoever you're leasing from, whether it's Ryder or REL or Penske, have a conversation and understand what are the implications if I lease in Tennessee versus leasing in Wisconsin versus leasing in. I mean, I think they like to run a lot of their leases out of Wisconsin because I think there's a tax advantage there for both them. Or, for example, REL, I think they run a lot of their leases out of Wisconsin because there's a tax advantage there for both them and for you as a contractor. And then the other thing just to remember is that you can title your vehicle wherever you are able to get your vehicle titled. You do not have to title your vehicle. Like I operate in Kentucky. I do not have a single one of my vehicles titled in Kentucky. I actually, I don't have any vehicles titled in Tennessee either. All my vehicles are either titled in Mississippi or in Illinois, and I am planning on starting to title vehicles in Ohio. And we've talked about it in the past. Ohio is a very advantageous state to title vehicles. It's all online. You don't have to actually deal with the DMV because I believe it's county by county. Counties deal with titling instead of dealing with it, the Department of Motor or the Bureau. I think it's called the BMV, the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. And so it's a little bit less onerous than titling it in Illinois. So it's one of the things that I think I'm going to save myself, maybe $50 or $100 per truck by titling it in Ohio versus titling it in Illinois. And while that's, not a lot of money, when you add up 35 trucks a year that I'm titling, it makes a big difference.
Absolutely. I was going to ask what kind of the process is for titling your vehicles in a different state than you operate, because I'll admit I've only gotten my own titles through the dealerships of the cars that I bought.
So in Illinois and in Mississippi, you have to have either an employee or yourself who happens to have a Mississippi or an Illinois driver's license. Then you need to have, I'm actually in the process of titling a vehicle right now. You need to have a bill of sale. And then you actually need to have the old title. And the old title has to be signed over to you. And then you take this and you submit it with an online application to Illinois or Mississippi. And then I highly recommend that you take a copy of that before you actually submit it in. So PDF the whole thing. And then submit the PDF to FedEx to prove that you have applied for your title, and then submit it in, and you usually get your title back. I typically get my titles back from Illinois within about 60 days. Mississippi can be as fast as 30 days or as slow as 90 days, depending on how backlogged. I usually go to DeSoto County. They seem to be really efficient. Um, so that's
Yeah, that
just,
doesn't seem
yeah.
terribly hard, except for maybe having someone with an address there.
Well, I mean, you don't necessarily, they have to have a license in that location,
That's what it is.
because you can always get it sent to a PO box. So, and getting a PO box in Mississippi costs you maybe, I think I pay $300 a year for a PO box in Mississippi. I mean, that's my business address, even because I have to have an address in every location that I operate in. You have to have a address in for your foreign entity license or your alien corporate or your corporate alien registration, depending on which state, what the rules are.
Mhm.
So I'm organized to operate in Illinois, and then I have a foreign entity license to operate in Colorado, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Mississippi. Um, Actually, I also have one in Ohio and in Arkansas because in order to pay child support payments for employees who work for me, I needed to have a corporate account with those states to be able to remit child support payments to those states. And you'll find
Got it.
as you grow your business and you get employees who live in Arkansas or Missouri or wherever, you're going to find that you have a lot of drivers who have garnishments, who have child support payments, or for whatever reason that you're going to be getting letters or mail from these states saying that you owe money on behalf of this employee to the state. And so generally it just makes it more efficient if you organize, and it doesn't cost you any money to file with that state, especially if you're not generating any revenue there. So you don't have to file any income returns or anything like that. You just need to file and you just need to file you need to provide them with your certificate of good standing usually. And that's all you need to do on an annual basis. And maybe, I think Kentucky had to pay a $35 licensing fee on an annual basis. So
Not bad. Doable for all the money that you'd save doing all the other stuff
I'm
too.
sorry, I realized it gotten that bright in my office.
Yeah, and two, if
Um,
anybody has questions about registering as a foreign entity and things like that, we can help with that here at Rock Consultants.
Yes, I would definitely reach out to Rob Consultants for a number of different things. I mean, one, understanding the nuances about where I can title my vehicles, what states are more sufficient for titling. They can advise you on buying vehicles, like what are the advantages of buying a vehicle in Georgia versus Florida. Highly recommend Georgia versus Florida. You think that Florida would be a great state, but they don't give you a rolling stock exemption, so definitely take a look at that. Obviously, Florida is a great state to operate in because you have no income tax there. So those are things to think about. Like, where is it a good Delaware? Why is it good to organize in Delaware? You don't pay any income tax there. Texas, you don't pay any income tax, but you pay an asset tax. Tennessee, you don't pay any income tax, you pay an asset tax. Wyoming, I don't know the rules. Alaska, you don't pay any income tax. There are states out there where you pay no income tax. So definitely, if you reach out to Rock Consultants, they can put you in touch with the right CPAs and the right lawyers to help you organize your company appropriately to minimize your tax burden. I think that's the appropriate language.
It is, it is. Yeah, again, any savings that you can get really in any way is always advantageous. So
Yes. I mean, and that's what I mean, as a business owner, that's a lot of what I spend my time doing, either looking for ways to save money. I mean, for example, I had one of my managers call me up today and say, hey, I want to buy 50 gallons worth of oil. I wanted to buy 35 gallons worth of antifreeze and windshield wiper fluid. And he's like, I found this great deal on Amazon. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that Amazon is not going to be the best place for us to buy 50 gallons worth of motor oil. Let's go to let's go to Granger and see what Granger offers. Let's go to like these other industrial versions of Amazon and see what they offer. And I went to this place called, it's actually called Imperial. I have an account with Imperial. What is it called? Imperial Supplies. Sorry. So they are an aggregator of like Granger and other industrial um, um, producers of motor oil, of cleaning supplies, uniforms, tires, tire irons, and stuff like that. And I went to them and I said, hey, I need to buy 50 gallons worth of 15W40. What's the best deal you could do? And they gave me a couple great deals, free shipping, just like Amazon. And I saved myself, I think, $150, so it was great. And
Yeah.
I bought all the motor oil I needed, all the antifreeze and all the windshield wiper fluid to prepare my business for winter because it's October and I'm starting to say, okay, hey, what are the things that my vehicles need to have to get through the winter? So my vehicles that operate in the mountains, I need to make sure that they all have tire chains. My vehicles that operate in the south, I want to make sure that they all have a bag of sand in their crew compartments, that they have 15W40, they have antifreeze, they have coolant. My vehicles in the north, I make sure they all have heater cords. So this is something that you should know. Diesel engines don't start really well when it's really cold outside. So we do something called, we heat up the engine blocks. What you do is you plug the engine into an outlet. And they heat the engine and they keep it relatively warm compared to the outside temperature. So your vehicle will turn over when you try to fire it up on diesel.
Oh, that's good to know. I didn't know that. I knew about the buying bulk. Buying bulk is something we
Yeah.
recommend doing if you can, you have a big enough business that you can afford that. Can have a lot of savings there. I did not know that about heating up engines.
Yeah. So like in Noki, for example, every single vehicle is assigned a parking spot, or in my operations, so my entire business is signed. I have 25 or 24 trucks up there. Each of my vehicles has a parking spot that is assigned to me.
Mhm.
So they all park there. And then on top of that, if you look at they have these columns behind every parking spot, and each one of those has an outlet in it. And that specifically is for, I mean, it's great for me to be able to use it to do for an impact wrench or to plug in like that kind of stuff. But realistically, the reason why is that in the winter months, from November through March, every single one of my vehicles is required to be plugged in every night.
Hmm. The more
And
you know.
usually I pay the last driver in my fleet, a couple extra bucks to walk the line and make sure that every single vehicle is plugged in at, 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. when he gets home.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it gets cold up there.
not super cold, but cold enough.
Not
And
compared to Colorado, I guess,
it's
but
definitely not like Minnesota or Montana. I mean, the guys up in or like Buffalo. I mean, it's a different story when you're working out of underneath 9 feet of snow in Buffalo.
whew, yeah, my threshold for cold is low though. I'm Tennessee natural native. So, anything north of this is I'm like, man, whew, too cold for me.
So,
Perfect.
um, yeah. So we can go to question, or we can go do the
Yeah, yeah.
questions when we get a chance.
If anybody has any questions, go ahead and load those in the chat at the bottom. Not the chat, I'm sorry, in the Q&A function. Do not put in the chat, Q&A function. And we do have, I'm going to go ahead and read some listings and some events for this week. So we've got one new listing this week. It is out of Middle Tennessee. It's 13 P&D routes listed at $950,000, which is about 62% of revenue. It does have just shy of a 15% EBITDA, 16 employees, and 2 managers. It is a low mileage operation in a great territory. So the 2 managers, they are full-time, so they pretty much handle the daily operations of the business, low mileage with low stem miles. And then there is some assumable truck debt to help kind of with that finance of the purchase, a creative strategy if you need a little bit to close the gap there. And it does have newer model vehicles in the fleet. And as far as our events go, we do have our new investor summit virtual course that we have available if anyone wants to sign up for that. It does come with a visit to our Nashville office. So a day-long course here at our Nashville office where you can meet the team and meet other people who are, entering the FedEx industry. And our next one is actually this coming Friday, October 25th at 9 a.m. So if anybody wants to get in on that at the last minute, we may have some spots left. I'm not really sure, but that's also just a little bit of warning there, but our next one is going to be on November 15th. So if anybody's interested in signing up for that virtual new investor summit, you can come to the office and visit us. We normally have them about once a month, whatever works best for your schedule. And that's all the events we've got. If anybody has any Q&A, let me see here. It does not look like we have any questions right now. So I'll talk
So
slow.
I will say one thing. I think that, it's October 23rd right now.
Mhm.
Generally, what I'm doing right now is preparing for peak. And one of the other things I'm doing is preparing for inclement weather. So I'm making sure that all my drivers have cold weather gear. So for me, since I operate I mean, I generally operate in the South, but my drivers do go north, and there's, even if they operate in the South, there is still risk of Mississippi freezing over. It happens at least every other year. They get a big ice storm. So I'm making sure that all my vehicles have a gallon of antifreeze. All my vehicles have a gallon of motor oil. And all my vehicles have a gallon of windshield wiper fluid that can operate under cold weather it has de-icer in it. What I do is I take milk jugs, I put all these things into a milk jug, and I put the milk jugs, if it's in a team vehicle, I put it in the under compartment that goes underneath the sleeper. If it's a day cab, we strap it underneath the passenger seat. There's usually enough space where you can actually fit a milk jug with all those things in there. Other things I do is I make sure all my drivers have gloves, because the last thing you want is a driver having numb hands trying to hook up a dolly and smashing a finger, and then you have a workers' comp claim. Um, I like to provide my drivers with jackets. So all my drivers either on an annual or semi-annual basis, they'll either get hoodies or sweatshirts or jackets. So this year I did jackets. And they're high vis jackets. They're bright yellow with reflective gear on them, and they all say Alpha Kilo on them. In the years past, I've done beanies as well. I do, just things like that to try to take care of your drivers, show them that you care about them, and making sure that they are prepared for winter. And then the last thing is all my team trucks, whether they operate in locations that might have snow and ice or not, every single one of my vehicles has to have safety chains inside of, or it has to have tire chains inside of them, because you never know when you're going to get so much snow that you need to have tire chains. So even my guys who go up and down the eastern seaboard where they're not supposed to have tire chains, they have tire chains in their vehicles just in case they get trapped by a snowstorm on I-95.
Yeah, it's that time of year. So
Yeah.
getting there. And it does look like we have some questions. So
Okay.
So Daniel asked, are there any potential savings with the IFTA?
So for anybody that doesn't know, IFTA stands for International Fuel Tax Association, which is part of the International Registration Plan. So if you decide to take base plates from FedEx, so just from the start, FedEx provides free of charge IFTA and base plate for you. I am a participant. There is a lot of mixed feelings about whether or not you want FedEx to do your IFTA and your base plates. I'm a big fan. Anything that I can get free is a free option to me. It means that I'm making more money. So FedEx doesn't charge. They just do this for your benefit. There are arguments to say that you can actually save a little bit of money by doing your own base plates and doing your own IRP, because when you do base plates for FedEx, you're doing it for all lower 48 states. And if you only operate in 2 states or 3 states, there might be less registration, because you don't have to spread out your registration across all 48 states. The IFTA, with a grain of salt, that FedEx does make mistakes. I find that FedEx is fine doing my IFTA. I just have to review my quarterly IFTA statements on a regular basis to make sure that FedEx doesn't make any mistakes. When they do, I usually submit the mistakes to FedEx, or you dispute the IFTA bill, and then you usually get it reimbursed within, it's usually never longer than 2 to 4 weeks, and you don't actually have to pay it until you agree to the amount. And the way I've structured my IFTA is that I generally get a reimbursement. This is a little bit more of a more higher level complication or strategy, but what you want to do is you always want to buy fuel in the most expensive states you can, because FedEx reimburses you based off of the gas you buy or the diesel that you buy and the taxes that you pay. So, for example, I run from Kentucky to Champaign, Illinois on a daily basis. I tell my driver I drive most of my miles in Kentucky and in Indiana. And then we do I think it's about 49 miles that we do in Illinois. I always tell my driver to buy gas in Illinois because the fuel tax there is 74 cents a gallon versus 50 something in Indiana and like 30 something in Kentucky. Now, the way IFTA works is that they reapportion the taxes that you pay versus the number of miles that you drive in any state. So if you drive more miles in a low tax state, but you pay more taxes in a high tax state where you don't drive a whole lot of miles, you're going to get a refund because you're only going to pay the 74 cents a gallons, 74 cents per gallon tax in Illinois based on a prorated versus the number of miles that you drove in Illinois. So while it's kind of, it's kind of a, the minutia of the IFTA plan, it's a way for you to make more. It's a way for you to to be more tax efficient, in operating your business. So California, Illinois, New Jersey, Pennsylvania are all high tax states. So if you run in those states, you want to buy, as much gas as possible in those states. And by extension, I think like Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas are some of the cheaper states when it comes to fuel taxes.
All right, looks like that's it for today.
Awesome.
If anybody does have questions, if you're on now again or on YouTube later on watching and you come up with some questions about titling or really anything we covered today, feel free to reach out to us at info@routeconsultant.com and we'll be happy to help. Otherwise, thank you, Alex, as always, a very informative session, and we will see everybody next week.
Oh, and Daniel, your last question. Yes, I do. I do it through Leah. So please reach out to Leah or through Josh, and they will set you up with to do consulting services.
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, I didn't even see that. I exited out. Yes, we do consulting services. I know I jumped the gun. We do consulting and services. We've got lots of packages available to suit your needs. And anybody on the Route Consultant team is happy to help connect you with those.
Yes, definitely.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.